welcome to our session on the road to getting the UK's best 5G network and exploring why this is important. I'm Rhys Enfield, Infrastructure Acceleration Director at West Midlands 5G. The session will take the form of some information sharing and a discussion with our panel guests, who I will introduce in a moment. But firstly, we hope this will be an interactive session and we will be inviting you to vote on some topics to explore further. Can I therefore invite the audience to use the interactive tool Slido? Details are on the slide. Thank you. You can either put the URL into your browser on your smartphones and when prompted, enter the event code, or you can download the Slido app from the App Store. If you set this up now, you'll be ready to participate when we get to the voting stage. So please, could you set it up now? Thank you. Also, to remind you, at the end of our debate, we will be opening up to questions from the audience. Please feel free to add questions in chat as we go along, and these will be picked up at the end. Can you move to the next slide, please? Together with mobile network operators and all 7 local authorities within the West Midlands, we have already helped our region's towns and cities accelerate access to 5G. At today's session, we have the digital champions from the 3 cities within the region, Birmingham, Coventry and Wolverhampton, as we feel it is really important to understand the regional perspective and why it's important to get 5G ready. Therefore, I'd like to introduce Peter Bishop, Director for Digital and Customer Services.
Hi everyone.
Birmingham City Council. Paul Ward, Head of ICT and Digital, Coventry City Council.
Hello.
Heather Clark, Strategic Projects and Funding Manager, City of Wolverhampton Council.
Hello.
And we also have West Midlands 5G Business Development Director, Michelle Sabatier, to give a bit more insight into the opportunities that 5G offers.
Morning.
One of the key objectives of West Midlands 5G is to accelerate 5G deployment within the region. Our second objective is to test, prove and scale new 5G products and services. So why is this important to get the infrastructure right? Well, it will mean businesses and public sector organisations can get involved much sooner, which will help to position the region and the UK as a world leader in 5G technology. To truly harness the revolutionary benefits of 5G, it's vital we get the foundations right and develop a 5G ecosystem that is fit for the future and will then support the development of new 5G products and services. We will hear more on how the development of products and services in a moment when I invite Michelle to share information on our application accelerator. So how have we been delivering on accelerating 5G in the region? As you can see here from an independent report, the West Midlands was one of the first regions to launch 5G and now has the best 5G coverage. So Peter, it must be pleasing to see Birmingham at the forefront of 5G coverage. What does this actually mean for the city in terms of its digital strategy? And importantly, what will it mean for citizens?
Thanks, Rhys. Yeah, no, I think 5G is really important for the city. It just expands the ability for connectivity. It gives us opportunities to reuse and think about different ways of service delivery. I think for citizens themselves, if they've got connectivity, which is obviously one of our key constraints that have come out through COVID, they are going to see the benefits that 5G delivers. But I think we need to work harder as a city to enable those who don't have connectivity to actually get connectivity. The speed of access that 5G will deliver has a lot of use cases that I think are going to be relevant, not only for the city in the way the city delivers services to its citizens, but also to how citizens actually engage with the services they've got, like ambulance services that work talking to their GP, video. There's going to be a lot of opportunity, but I don't think we should miss those who still excluded though. So that's a factor for us in terms of thinking about how 5G extends across the city, I think.
Okay, thanks, Peter. And Heather, Wolverhampton City Council understood the value that 5G could deliver to the city and were keen to deploy it as quickly as possible, helping to accelerate the deployment of 5G connectivity in the city by more than 6 months. Why was it so important, and what were the digital and 5G ambitions of the city going forward?
I think the City of Wolverhampton recognised the importance of digital infrastructure as the backbone to the modern thriving economy, driving productivity, driving growth, and delivering very effective and efficient public services. So this is reflected a lot in our strategy. So driven by digital is a cross-cutting theme of our Relighting the City recovery strategy. Digital transformation is critical to relighting our council. It underpins agile working and service design. Now, COVID has accelerated this digital transformation, but we recognise that it is critical to levelling up the economy and powering the recovery. Going forward, we would like to see digital as being considered that fourth utility, but again, as reflected by Birmingham, really to maximise benefit, we need to tackle that digital divide. We need to improve those digital skills. We need to support businesses to digitalise and also explore the introduction of smart technology to support delivery of services.
Thank you, Heather. Okay, so I'm sure the question is on many people's lips as to how we have positioned the region to achieve the best 5G coverage in the UK. The simple answer is collaboration, getting parties to work together for a common goal, the social and economic benefits that 5G will bring. Colleagues we have had on the panel today, and also the mobile network operators, planners and other interested parties, ensure we all work together to achieve that common goal. One of the first things we did was to set up a digital champions forum across the region. And I'm now going to probe excuse me, the panel as to why and how this has been effective. Firstly, Peter, can you share and advise on how working with operators has enabled swift access for 5G upgrades in the city?
Yeah, I think Rhys, you covered it there in your introduction in terms of the collaboration. We know that to get any kind of infrastructure rollout across any kind of urban area, there's quite a lot of discussion you need to have between a number of parties, not within the council as well as obviously the operators themselves. So I think the one thing that the 5G team in the Combined Authority have really helped with is to join the dots between the planners, the highway team, the operators, various third parties, to actually start understanding what are the barriers to those to that rollout, what's stopping them doing it in a fast way, and that has actually helped actually improve the speed of operation across the deployment across the city. And I think that's at the heart of it. There is a lot of concern in the community about 5G, but actually the collaboration that we've worked with the Combined Authority on the 5G rollout across those multidisciplinary areas has really helped drive the deployment, and that's been a really critical point for the success of the 5G rollout. I think the other thing we've also tried to work harder on is public engagement around the perceived public health risks that has been going around, particularly with the COVID crisis. People linking 5G quite completely incorrectly to this, and dispelling myths and misinformation has been another area that we've collaborated on quite readily to try and improve the deployment.
Okay, and Paul, from a Coventry perspective, can you tell us if you've seen progress on planning applications to help speed up the process?
Yeah, absolutely. Following on from Peter's point and your intro, Rhys, I think we can't stress enough the point about an importance of collaboration and a common understanding. I think that obviously there are standard age-old mechanisms for planning applications across all local authorities. and just throwing planning applications into that standard machinery, isn't necessarily the best method of achieving what we're trying to achieve here, because it is a big infrastructure build out. There's no getting around from that. But I think collaborating to understand upon the purpose, why are we doing this? Yes, there are the health concerns, as Peter's rightly highlighted, that do need to be addressed. But what is the purpose? What is the economic benefit? What is the social benefit of 5G? So that there's a real narrative that can be built up around why it is that we are investing so heavily and why it is so important. It's more than just 4G plus one. It's actually a complete game changer, and really for planners, communities, elected members, citizens primarily, to understand why it is that we are doing this big infrastructure build out. So it is a big collaborative piece. Once we've adopted that model in Coventry, we saw a much more of a speed up in terms of an understanding, in terms of programs from mobile network operators, in terms of what the extent of their program is, rather than piecemeal just having massed applications drop in. That also helps in terms of planning from our planning team, if that makes sense, in terms of their workloads, being able to overlay existing schemes in the city, or Coventry, Birmingham, Wolverhampton, all of the combined authority, local authorities are doing a lot of development, so it's really important to understand how it kind of integrates with those developments. And we're kind of rolling forward now, looking away from the macro masts, the big masts that you'll see in the street, to, okay, so what are the considerations we need to make for small cells as well? And we might touch on that a little bit later when we come to talk about urban mobility, but we are starting to think about, what are the planning considerations and other considerations for a small cell deployment, because they're obviously a lot higher density than the macro cell. So to answer the question, yes, we have seen an acceleration through the power of collaboration.
That's great. Thanks for that, Paul. Good insight. So one area we work closely with local authorities is the development of a connected map. The first in the UK, a tool showing where connectivity issues exist and helping to understand how to resolve them. Heather, from Wolverhampton's perspective, what benefits do you think the connected map brings to the region?
I think Wolverhampton recognised very early on the importance of public assets to support the rollout of digital infrastructure and 5G. Well, working with WM5G, we did map those assets, including land, buildings, also lampposts and heights, and that's very linked in with the potential for rollout of small cell, as Paul mentioned. WM5G Connected Map has helped MNOs identify new sites for 5G masks, and we've been working very closely with the operators to put code agreements in place, simplify processes, including pre-application discussions with our planners. Ultimately, our aim is to make it easier to deploy in Wolverhampton, giving us that future-proofed network connectivity for our citizens and businesses.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, so why is 5G important? Well, while the overall economic and social predicament, both for the region and country, faces still appears ominous, we have seen our usage of digital services increase dramatically as a result of the lockdown and social distancing. This has created a wealth of opportunities as well as challenges. Management consultants McKinsey have suggested that we have vaulted 5 years forward in terms of consumer and business digital adoption in the short space of a few months. McKinsey's UK data reports a 69% increase in telemedicine, a 60% increase in remote learning, a 50% increase in online fitness, and a 35% increase in online grocery ordering, with many of these trends predicted to stay permanently in spite of the pandemic. 5G will prove fundamental to fulfilling the potential of digital connectivity. So, what are the views of the panel? Where do we think 5G will be most used in the next 5 years? Paul, have you got any views on these points?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's across, because it's so ubiquitous and so far-reaching, as Peter said in answer to your previous question. I think that there's a play against all of these, but for me, I think the one that I focus on is urban mobility, in terms of because of the the data that is churned around, say, connected autonomous vehicles and sensor networks that go around that, I think the very obvious benefits to 5G around urban mobility for me.
Okay, thanks. Michelle, would you like to give your thoughts? Can you go back one, please, Ben?
Yeah. Yes, I think probably one of the biggest significant application is in health and social care. So as the interesting thing is, because of the virus, it's become much more difficult for patients to go and visit health centers and hospital and etc. So it has accelerated a lot the telemedicine, and obviously all of this relies on having a very good communication infrastructure, of which 5G is a very big component.
Okay, great. And I know, Peter, you're very keen on the digital workplace. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think we've got to think how the increase in speeds and the bandwidth that 5G gives us, in how the workplace is going to work. It may be less about the remote working, as in, you know, what we're all doing at the moment, which is, you know, working in our homes. But perhaps for those who still need to go out and absolutely go out, like planning enforcement or planning management. I mean, if we can think about sort of real-time 3D mapping, visualizations of planning applications in real time on site, and actually being able to step through how a planning application may or may not look with speed without any issues, is probably an area for us to be thinking about. I think Michelle's mentioned about social care. There's going to be a lot more video consultation, and we really need high-speed 5G for that, and I think that will play an increasingly important part. And if we then think about how that might play a part in social isolation, I think then that will help as well. So at one level, it's a very rich opportunity of areas that 5G could actually support us on. I think we also need to be mindful, of course, that it needs a good fibre connectivity in the background. So that's something we all need to be working hard on, to make sure that the level of fibre deployment across the cities where we live and work is as good as it can be.
Thanks for that, Peter. Yeah, very useful. Also, that point about fibre, key component to 5G. So now it's time for the audience to get involved, and time to vote as to which of these areas you think are basically going to be most used for 5G in the next 5 years. Well, seem to have a clear winner in health and social care. Not a lot for city centre regeneration or education. Heather, got any views on that?
I think in terms of city centre regeneration, as a city, we were enjoying record levels of private and public investments, including about 992 million on site and planned in our city centre. But before COVID, we were facing some challenges, not least around connectivity in the city centre, but also things like the struggling high streets. Now, I feel that actually digital could play a key role in transforming the city centres. So, for example, digital connectivity is embedded in our city's Future High Streets Fund bid, also Towns Fund bid, because it really recognises the benefit that digital could bring to that city centre regeneration. It also opens up key opportunities to transform our cities, including smarter housing, smarter workplace, and introduces innovations such as digital twins for high streets going forward.
Okay, great. I see no scores for education either. Peter, any views on that?
Well, I think it's surprising, but that education isn't in there in terms of where it will be used. I actually think education is an area where 5G will play a bigger role. We just got to look at what it can deliver, and you think about immersive education, immersive lessons, different kind of delivering content, different lesson plans, and all that kind of stuff would seem to be an obvious area to have a look at.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
If I can just come in on that point, Reese. So,
Yeah.
from an education point of view, Coventry University have just established one of the UK's first standalone 5G cores in their Health and Life Sciences building. So if you can go and check out, it's through Vodafone. If you go and check out the videos that only went live a couple of weeks ago in terms around the immersive. I mean, when I went to college, no chance of any of this sort of stuff. It wasn't that immersive, but you know, a journey through a human body, and it blows my mind. It really does blow my mind. So from an education point of view, I think, as Pete says, tip of the iceberg in terms of what the art of the possible is in terms of where we go that. So I would encourage anyone that's listening to go and check out the videos from Coventry University and Vodafone in terms of their standalone 5G core in their Health and Life Sciences building. It really is very impressive. And as I say, it's the start of a really interesting journey for that industry, I think.
Yeah, really good point, that, Paul. Definitely got a clear winner on health and social care. I don't know if any of you want to add anything, any thoughts there?
I would say, obviously, health is at the forefront of everybody's mind at the present time. So it might be skewed by by events, because I agree with Paul that education is also a very big thing that will use 5G in the future. But maybe it's less obvious at the present time what is going to be, as everybody can understand now. Okay, I can't go to the doctor, or I can't go to the hospital. You know, I need some communication solution.
I suppose what's interesting is that 5G is at one level about mobility, because it obviously is all about mobile phones and people moving around. And of course, at the moment, we're all trying to stop being move around. So that's an interesting debate then about what actually is in your workplace, which is actually at the moment at home. So is 5G important in the home, or is it more important that you've got good fibre connectivity, which is a sort of interesting change in the way the sort of environment has happened over the last few weeks and months.
Yeah, that's a really valid point, that, Peter. I think in my mind the answer is all types of connectivity are important, whether that's fibre or mobile connectivity, and certainly let's hope we get back to some normality in the next 12 months or so. You know, 5G is you know, back where it needs to be, with people moving around. Yeah. Okay, let's move on then. Thank you. Okay, so a very interesting debate, but how can businesses and public sector organisations actually find out about 5G to gain awareness of its potential to their business, but more importantly, bring together supply and demand side businesses to take 5G ideas and work together to turn those into commercially viable propositions? So firstly, to Michelle to answer this question and give some insight into how the accelerators we have launched in the region are accessible to this audience here with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. WM5G with in partnership with O2, Deloitte, Vera, and Digital Catapult, we have launched 5G application accelerators. Ultimately, there will be 3 locations in Birmingham, Wolverhampton, and Coventry. Obviously, at the present time, we are running online events since you know, we started actually back in July, and these events are available to all businesses or organizations from the West Midlands or even further. there are mainly three types of events. One short event to discover what 5G can do for your business. So, you know, if you don't know too much about 5G, you've just heard of it, you wonder how it could apply to your business, this is the event for you. The second type of event is a hackathon type event that lasts about a week. Obviously not full time for a week, but that lasts about a week, where you join with some other businesses and technical experts and business experts, and then you can develop business cases and ideas of how it could really apply specifically to your business. And hopefully at the end, you will have either a business case for your business to use 5G or your organization, or maybe even some ideas of products or services that you could already implement. And then finally, starting in next January, there will be a much more involved 3 months type event, which is also open to all, but will be by selection. You need to apply, and there for 3 months you will be able to develop products and services, use the test beds that will be available at that time with all the advanced functionalities of testbed to really develop products, test services and products. And at the end of this 3 months, you should hopefully have a prototype or minimum viable product, business case to take it to market or to take it into your organization, and then get on with creating value around 5G. In addition to all of this, we are Telefonica is also committed to upgrade the 5G network around the locations, so that you know, you can test the product that you want to develop in real life. Yes. If you want to know more, you should go to spring.org, noting that it's not spring, but it's 5Spring. Yes, the website is there, and you know, join us for some events to discover about 5G, and then apply to the longer accelerator that will start in January. It's already running online, as I was saying, and then once it's possible, and it will definitely start in January, and then as soon as it's possible, hopefully on the 1st of November, we'll then open the physical location for people to be able to come there as well.
Okay, that's great, Michelle. So what sectors or verticals is Spring focusing on?
So if you move to the next slide, then first of all, I want to say that it is open to everybody, okay? But in order to make the event more interesting and more focused and more valuable, we are also running events that specialize in certain sectors. So first of all is health and well-being, or citizen well-being, as we were discussing before. Then manufacturing, mobility, transport, and finally construction. So if you go on the Spring website, you will see that events are organized by category: small, medium, and long term. And then also some events are specifically targeted for certain sectors. Yes. But if you don't work in any of these sectors, you can also join the event and you will still learn a lot. Yes.
Okay, great. So so what are the views of the panel? What areas should Spring focus on that align with the priorities for your area, for example? So Heather, what are your thoughts?
Well, for our area, I think sort of manufacturing and construction are very important. So Wolverhampton has a very strong manufacturing base. including a lot of aerospace and automotive companies. We also have a lot of construction underway on the ground, and our University of Wolverhampton is building a new construction and built environment super campus. So I can see a huge amount of opportunities looking at how we can improve productivity within construction, linked to opportunities such as this new investment in sort of the best standard of construction for the University of Wolverhampton. Now, in terms of the role that 5G can play, I think that 5G can really change the ways that manufacturing businesses are operating, including the adoption of Industry 4.0, which has the potential to transform traditional industry and the way it works. I feel that the Wolverhampton Spring Application Accelerator can really play a significant role in this, in helping manufacturing and construction businesses developing new 5G products and processes, which ultimately drive productivity and growth.
Yeah, I just could have come in there. I think it's really important that we help as much in the manufacturing and construction space, and really for the economic recovery of the region. There's a lot of manufacturing in the West Midlands, and I think it's going to be really challenged during the recession that is upon us now. So I think 5G, we've got to help people really embrace what the opportunities that it provides.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Peter. So Paul, for Coventry, what area do you think you'd be focusing on?
Well, as I mentioned in answer to the previous question, urban mobility is a big deal for Coventry, not least of all because of Coventry's heritage in the motor industry. But with Transport for the West Midlands doing some really interesting, innovative, and industry changing things with connected autonomous vehicles. And that route touches a number of authorities on the West Midlands patch, obviously one of them being Coventry, that we're looking to, how can we continue to innovate in that space. And with connected autonomous vehicles, obviously there's a big industry play there in terms of car manufacturers and kind of road network providers and those sorts of things. But actually where Spring and the application accelerators for me has an advantage is targeting the SMEs. So yeah, a car that can drive itself is phenomenal, obviously, but actually the user experience, the immersive experiences that go in there, there's more creative aspects, so that when someone's sat in a pod, actually maybe some augmented reality experiences for historical, this is how Coventry used to look, or this is how Birmingham used to look, sort of thing. Those more immersive experiences that SMEs might not have access to the technology to be able to really testbed this thing, which is, for me, is why the application accelerators are so important. That it complements the big industry play on mobility with where the local supply chain, that's important to us, the local supply chain of SMEs and creative SMEs can really get involved in and have access to the technology they couldn't necessarily afford if they were to try to do it themselves.
Okay. And Peter, what areas sort of Birmingham focusing on?
I think Michelle made the point earlier that we're all pretty obsessed with, quite rightly, with health and social care at the moment with the current pandemic. So I think if anything that 5G can do to enable individuals and families and friends to connect more closely together, for them to work with their GPs in a more integrated way, especially those who are vulnerable or shielding. So we've got to see online consultations become far more immersive in its potential. I think that links then to how we train medical professionals differently, and that's where 5G can provide sort of immersive experiences. Paul mentioned that earlier. Obviously, there's been some good work around the ambulances and stuff like that, which I think is certainly an advantage. I think we're all wearing the wearables, so to speak. So that kind of link to create much more early intervention in people's healthcare needs is going to be a critical area. It always has been a critical area. If we think about it in reducing type 2 diabetes or other medical conditions. But if we can get much more real-time engagement and real-time monitoring of that, that's going to play a distinct advantage. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are, we can think about use cases for 5G with those with long-term conditions that are COVID related as well. So I think we can't lose sight of the health and social care agenda at the moment, and that has to be a really important part for all of us, I think.
Agree.
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. So it's now time for the audience to get involved again, and we'll have another vote. So what are the current views? I'll just give it a minute to see if we get a few changes. So manufacturing seems to be coming out on top at the moment. Any of the panel got some thoughts on that?
I would have a thought if I wasn't on mute. Sorry. Sorry, Heather.
That's the best thought you've had all week, Peter, as well.
It was. Oh, I really appreciate sharing that. It was insightful. Sorry, Heather.
I was just going to reiterate the message that Peter said, that the manufacturing industry is being particularly adversely affected through this crisis, and the importance of coming out there and helping to regrow it at the other end through the use of technology really can't be understated.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to add is that it's also about flexibility and resilience. So in Industry 4.0, one of the biggest benefits is that you can reconfigure easily your manufacturing plant to do different things, maybe selling machine time or building different products, depending obviously what you do. Yes, and this obviously very important when you have crisis like the one that we're just experiencing, that you can switch to do something else if whatever you're doing before doesn't work anymore.
It's interesting. I was wondering whether gaming is an area that we think they'll see some strong development in.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, gaming is maybe the most important consumer benefits with being able to do real-time virtual reality games while you're moving around even. And also we have a very big industry of gaming in Leamington Spa in the region. So with, I suppose, most of the big gaming companies in the world are represented in Leamington Spa. And,
yeah, no, absolutely. I think definitely those immersive augmented reality or gamification type experiences, you only need to look at the explosion of Pokemon Go and the impact that had for that period of time is just a dip in the toe in the water, really, in terms of those kind of immersive mixed mode experiences of augmented reality. I think there's definitely that, in a way, I think could, and Heather mentioned digital twinning in an answer previously to city centre regeneration. I think that the morphing of those experiences that does have kind of its DNA in the gaming world, to really try and bring people back to city centres in a safe way, obviously, but to kind of mix the digital world and the real world. I think that's probably where we are going to end up, and it's a very exciting kind of opportunity, I think.
So maybe we're not living at work. We can live in our Xbox. That's actually immersive experience of working in the office, and we can all walk around with avatars, and it will feel quite like normal then.
Yeah,
possibly.
yes.
I might have some hair again, Peter. That might.
I think that's an excellent idea on the basis that we're living at home all the time.
Yeah.
There are even science fiction films about that. If you
Yeah, Ready Player
remember
One,
the
which
exact
was filmed in Birmingham.
Oh,
You know,
yeah, well,
so,
I
yeah,
didn't know that. Even
it
better.
was, no, it was. Yeah.
Okay. Any last thoughts from the panel on any of these points?
On the basis that he just said it was filmed in Birmingham, I just want to say, was it really? I mean, how do we know?
True. Yeah, true. But no, I think Steven Spielberg was in Birmingham, so it's I can guarantee it was.
Where would Stephen be?
Exactly.
Where else would he be? I mean, come on.
Exactly. Centre of the universe.
Okay, well, thanks for that. Okay, so that draws a close to our panel only session, and we would now like to open up the debate to the audience and start the Q&A session. So Ben has got me some questions up. So the first one, how is West Midlands 5G sharing their lessons learned across the region and wider? Okay, so I can probably answer that as a starting point. So from an infrastructure perspective, I suppose on a number of levels. So we're quite, we've been sharing a lot of our information around connected map, collecting of assets, what we've been doing in the barrier busting area. So working with councils around the code and the electronic communications code, that is, and also planning guidance and guidelines. So I would say we probably spoke to 40 councils maybe outside of the West Midlands and shared some of that knowledge, or initially shared it. We've also been working with DCMS to see how maybe we could roll out some of the work we've been doing beyond the West Midlands, and that's an ongoing discussion at the moment. Plus other groups like Midlands Engine, etc., in terms of them understanding what we've been doing and maybe looking to how we can take that to a wider audience. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that in terms of maybe other aspects, maybe Michelle?
Yes, so we obviously, don't want to labor the point too much, but the accelerator is a way to share 5G lessons with everybody, and then we're also sharing with other 5G test beds, like in Worcester or in West Mercia, and then more widely around the country.
Okay. Okay, great. So the next one, what role could 5G play in improving public services? Obviously, we talked a little bit about that. I wonder if any of the council panelists would like to have a go at answering that.
Yeah, I'll jump in first if I may. So I mean, I think I think there's a slightly higher question than this: what role could digital play in improving public services, and 5G being one of the connectivity components to that. And I think that the last 8 months has shown the challenges that the delivery of public services in the traditional mode have, given the pandemic, but equally, it's in terms of digital adoption, people thinking digitally, both local government organisations, public services, but also our citizens and consumers of that. So I think that we've talked a lot about big industry in terms of mobility around construction and manufacturing, but for me, there is still and it might seem quite basic, there are still some connectivity challenges in terms of people just either, whilst we might be able to provide, they might have some fibre running past the front of their house, they might not, there's a digital poverty aspect to this. So in terms of 5G making digital connectivity truly accessible for all, I think that is something that we do need to consider from a public service point of view. Now, clearly there's a cost to delivery of a 5G service, as there is a cost to deliver a fibre service. But I think when it's mobile, there's less. It is, you don't have to dig up someone's front garden for them to get access. So I think 5G, for me, it comes back to the connectivity play about making sure that as public services inevitably move to be more in the digital world. And we need to make sure that nobody, and I mean nobody's left behind by that because they can't access it. Obviously, there's a skills element to that, and obviously there's other components and accessibility components to that. But I think fundamentally, 5G answers some of that connectivity challenge that we do still have across the country. Not necessarily, I think that West Midlands is quite well placed connectivity-wise, I have to say. But I think nationally, there are still some connectivity challenges.
Yeah, I think if 5G, one of the things that 5G needs is good connectivity to make it all work.
Yeah.
And I think if that's inspired further investment in the infrastructure that it uses, which is then available for consumers as well as businesses, then I think that's got to be a great advantage for improving any kind of service, be public or actually commercial, and the economic development side of it. And so I sort of fully support what Paul said. I think at the moment we're very focused on dealing with the intervention requirements that COVID is requiring. But I think if as we develop the connectivity and the data and the digital experience and all the tech that 5G can really enable, then I think we can start to have different conversations with those communities we serve and intervene in slightly different ways to actually improve downstream outcomes. And I think that is the holy grail of what public service should be about, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, thanks for that. So moving on to the next question. So is there a cost to someone using Spring? So I'll direct that at Michelle.
So if your organization based in in effect there is no cost. It is financed by DCMS and WMCA and the labs. So there is no cost. Now there are also different opportunities in Spring. If you're a technology company and you want to sponsor some events and things like this, then this is also possible. And obviously there is a cost associated. But if you're a SME or a public organization or even a large company and you want to participate in the events, there is no cost for that. It is paid by public money.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Michelle. So the next one, this looks like one for you, Paul. How are country accelerating adoption of 5G in education?
Well, as I already mentioned, Compton University are doing some really interesting and innovative things with education in their health and life sciences faculty, which is really interesting. Warwick University are also doing. They are very closely linked with the connected autonomous vehicle work and obviously the 5G spillouts from that. So from a university point of view, that's we have both the universities on our patch are doing a lot of work in that area. Obviously, as we talked about a little bit earlier, there are wider education implications on that in terms of, and particularly when we look at, I think most schools now across the country will be writing remote learning strategies or having approaches to remote learning strategies. So it comes back to my earlier point about connectivity. Making sure that there is decent 5G coverage to provide that connectivity where remote learning is required and maybe required more moving forward. So we do work with the universities a lot in terms of the wider education element. It is something that we are working on. It's a difficult time in the education space at the moment, just generally because of all things COVID. But I think we need to make sure that we are addressing and getting as much digital connectivity into the education space as possible, because in essence that is our future. That is where the skills will come from in the future. So we can create this hotbed of connectivity and this digital infrastructure, but we need to make sure that we are giving people the opportunity through skills right from school age to really engage with and make the most of the technology moving forward.
Thanks for that response, Paul. Okay, so the next question: in the current climate, how are WM5G planning engagements through spring? So another one for you, Michelle.
So at the present time, since July, and for the foreseeable future, obviously, we are running the events online. Yes, it is obviously not ideal, but this is what we can do at the present time. The feedback from participants has been very good so far. We would rather do them in the locations, but okay, we can't. In January, we're planning to start the long event, as I was saying. We're still planning to do it face-to-face, but obviously we are already thinking on how we can do it half online and half not online, and have different ways for people to access the test beds, because there is an aspect of product development and testing in the test bed which is not that obvious to do online, because you can't really do it over the internet. But there are solutions to do it. So we'll see what happens. At the present time, it's online. As soon as we can, it will be face to face.
Okay, thank you. So the next one: what are the potential use cases, and do we have any examples that have been delivered? So I'll probably start with you, Michelle, again.
So there are many potential use cases. In addition to doing the spring, we're also running some project in healthcare, for instance, and we are doing a proof of concepts to do tele-diagnostic in care homes. So having diagnostic equipment, not just video, proper diagnostic equipment in care homes that allow GPs and people from hospitals to remotely connect to the care home and understand, vital signs and all of this from patients to have proper consultation remotely is one. Yeah, I'll let the others answer as well.
Yeah, I mean, that technology is deployed in a care home in Coventry, one of the care homes in Coventry, and I believe this week an ear infection was diagnosed for the first time remotely using that solution. So, not that maybe not a pleasant thing to say as a success, but it just goes to demonstrate the real change that there's been made there. And I think that definitely it plays back to the importance in the health and social care space around that.
Yeah, I think to add to that as well, there's a couple of trials that we've carried out. So one around a connected ambulance with UHB as well and BT. Similar situation, but allowing basically a scan to take place on an ambulance, which is controlled by a doctor back in the hospital. So that was one use case. Another one around identifying vacant parking positions on the street, with the future opportunity to utilize that information. So there's a number of trials started, which is all very positive, and as Michelle says, I'm sure there'll be lots coming through spring, and actually full use cases through West Midlands 5G. Does anybody else want to add on the potential use cases? No. Okay. So next question on there. how can you make rollout of 5G and small cells easier, specifically around planning, neutral hosts, support for power, investment in fibre infrastructure? Right, I'll take that one. That's quite a large question there. So in terms of making it easier for the rollout of 5G and small cells, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we've been working with councils, operators, infrastructure providers to all be more collaborative and actually look at the end goal and come up with solutions for deploying that infrastructure. So a simple example around small cells, we've collected all lamppost data from the 7 authorities in the West Midlands. We've put those into a digital map, the connected map. We've allowed infrastructure providers and operators access to that data, and they are now starting to use that to plan small cell solutions in the cities in the West Midlands. We've also facilitated discussions with the councils around what agreements should be put in place for utilising those lampposts, so something that is code compliant, and also the process for going about utilising those lampposts. So that has made the will make the deployment of small cells a lot easier. Around planning, again, we've worked with each individual authority in terms of how maybe they can improve their planning processes and make changes. So, for example, Solihull Council had a local plan which had certain requirements in it which weren't quite aligned with the National Planning Policy Framework, which was updated last year. So they went through a process of amending that local plan so it was all aligned. Yeah, so neutral host, again, another point there. On small cells, for example, we're looking to facilitate any provider. So if it is an operator or if it is a private neutral host infrastructure provider, we're basically opening that information up to any party who may be interested in using it. I don't know if anybody else would like to add some points around that.
Yeah, for me, it's about taking the strategic approach to it. So I understand why the support for power was included in that, in terms, because it's not just about it's the fibre, as Pete's mentioned a few times, the power to the masts and the power that goes around the devices themselves. So it's not just about green lighting planning applications for masts. It's about taking that holistic and strategic approach to digital to a city. And you know, looking at it in terms of strategically how we're going to get connectivity to everywhere that it needs to be regionally. So, and that's something that, as Reece has mentioned, the WM5G have helped with in terms of the connected map, and understanding the asset base to start with, so that we can start to make some of those bigger strategic decisions. It helps for us as local government organisations. It helps for suppliers because they know the size of the prize, frankly. So it's about taking that strategic approach and viewing all of the components that go to make it up, not just thinking about it in terms of some 5G masts from mobile network operators.
Okay, well, that's some great questions, and we're nearly out of time. So I'll bring the session to a close, and I would like to thank the panel for their brilliant input and views. Now, all that is left for me to say is that following today, if you would like to find out more, then please see the details on the slide and use our inquiries email address. So thank you all, and
thanks, Reece.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care all.
Bye. Take care.